Every moment I've ever experienced at a job was miserable. Don't get me wrong, some jobs were certainly worse than others, and some moments were certainly worse than others. But when I look back on all the jobs I had, I can't think of a single moment where I legitimately wasn't miserable. Now I know what you're thinking. Damn, bro, what job did you have? You must have really had a bad job. Not really. You see, this is pretty much the case for the overwhelming majority of jobs out there. Likely yours too, unless you're one of the few 10% that actually enjoys their job. At some point, you realize that this is the shit you're expected to do every damn day for the rest of your life. And you just gotta ask yourself, what the hell is even the point? Is there really nothing more to life than being reduced to a number on a spreadsheet?
Okay, Phil, you've complained about this in literally over 200 videos now. Are you going to tell us anything new, or do we just have to listen to the same thing again?
You're right, Chris. It's time we start asking questions and demanding better answers, myself included. So, over the weekend, I really asked myself, is there really nothing better out there than being stuck in a cubicle doing the same thing over and over for the rest of your life? I mean, there's gotta be more to life, right? There's gotta be a way out of this, right? Were we really meant to just work a job we hate, pay bills, and die? Sure, you could start your own business or try to be an entrepreneur. But as we all know, it's so brutally competitive in those fields. And not to mention, as some of you pointed out, you're now becoming a part of the problem yourself. Just on the opposite side of the coin, as you now become the exploiter instead of the exploited. Sure, you could fight for revolutionary political change, but let's be honest, how likely is that to happen anytime soon? Not to mention, does any politician from any side really, truly care about you at the end of the day? No. Every potential solution I've tried to find always left me feeling as if I was coming up just a bit short on the ultimate answer. So, over the weekend, I really took the time to research this to try to find the best ways young people can escape this BS rigged game and system. And as it turns out, I think I'm finally getting somewhere. By the end of this video, you'll have a much better idea on what you can do if you're tired of this miserable 9-to-5 rat race. No grand political movements, no long shot entrepreneur risks required. Just pure, practical, actionable steps you can start implementing today. Part 1, farmers. Hey Snowflake, no one's forcing you to work, but guess what? If you don't work, you don't get to eat and you starve. Farmers have to work to feed you, you know. Farmers.
Fuck you, bitch. Shut the fuck up.
Okay, so this argument popped up so many times from corporate shills in the comments, I decided to do some actual research on the economics of farming. You see, I found it very strange that no one making this argument was an actual farmer himself. They're all a bunch of corporate shills with comfortable desk jobs who actually look down on the very farmers who feed them for being lower class. Yet, when they need to defend their pathetic corporate exploitation, all of a sudden, they become a farmer's best friend and use them as a meat shield to justify why we should all be forced to work for their dogshit wages. Corporate shills will often tell you that, hey, if you don't want to work in a soulless cubicle, it's fine. You could try to be a farmer if you want. You'll see it's even more brutal hard work. I went to fact check this, and as it actually turns out, for the first time, these corporate shills are actually correct about this. The work of a modern day farmer is indeed 60 to 80 hours a week of physical, intense labor. But wait, something wasn't quite adding up here. You see, one interesting thing I discovered in making these videos was that medieval farmers worked only half of the year and had over 100+ holidays plus winters off. The same pattern repeated itself through almost every other historical era as well. In both the ancient Roman and Egyptian eras, farmers and even slaves got over 100 to 130 days of holidays per year. Keep this fact in mind, dear viewer. You'll soon see how this piece of knowledge can directly help you escape your own miserable 9-to-5. Anyways, this didn't make sense. You would think a modern farmer with all the modern technology and machinery at his disposal would have a far lesser workload burden than a medieval one who only had a rake and shovel. So, what am I missing here? Well, it turns out that the workload burden on a modern day farmer is significantly worse because despite our advanced technology, because modern day farmers are forced to work for capitalist profits, their workload is largely driven by market demand, which forces them to produce more crops to meet consumer needs. They're under the same brutal weight of capitalist pressure, just like the rest of us. Also, you have to factor in that unlike in the past where almost everyone did some level of farm work, today less than 2% of the population are farmers, meaning they have to work significantly harder to feed the rest of us. This is why the argument that, oh, if you don't work for my dogshit wages, you're a burden to the farmers who have to work to feed you, has now been officially debunked as just more corporate horseshit. You're going to be a burden to farmers whether you work or not. If you're so concerned with the well-being of farmers, which, let's be real, none of these corporate shills are, then you better be prepared to be a farmer yourself. If you were so concerned about farmers, you would argue that we should then all be forced to be farmers again. That's what would truly reduce the burden on them. Corporate shills have a delusional fantasy about money, where they think money is some magical fairy dust that can solve literally every problem on Earth. Probably because they're so used to just paying away for all their problems to go away. And I already know they'll try to justify in the comments by saying, but we pay the farmers. Yeah, first of all, you're paying them worthless currency that loses half its value every time the government decides it wants to push the print button. Second of all, money can only help reduce the burden on a farmer up to a certain point. It can help up to a certain threshold when it comes to investing in equipment and machinery. But beyond a certain point, the law of diminishing returns kicks in. And modern day farmers have long been pushed past that point. And I know they're going to say, but they agreed to this exchange of me paying money for their crops. No, they didn't. Just like with the rest of us, they're forced to work for your capitalist profits, or they too starve to death. That's not a choice. That's slavery. Okay, so now that we got our corporate shield destruction fix out of the way, let's talk about what you personally can do to use this knowledge to escape your miserable 9 to 5. As mentioned earlier, being a farmer is indeed a lot of hard work, but again, this is only if you're being forced to farm for capitalist profits. What if you were to just farm for yourself, however? Well, this is where things get really interesting. A user by the name of Acid Suzanne recently commented on one of my videos.
I'm a 22-year-old gal from Poland. I had always believed in homesteading and learning the art of living. Even though I was from a big city and loved it, I decided to go to a farming technical school, where I quickly learned that if your family doesn't teach you how to farm, nobody will, and there are no available resources for that. Came back to the big city, gained a few professions, and bought a small farm with my mother. It was fifth the price of a normal house. The shock on people's faces when I tell them I'm happy living by myself with my goats and chickens.
I was curious how many hours of work goes into this, so I went ahead and asked. This was quite a long response, so I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here. It turns out chickens and goats are fairly low labor, low maintenance animals. A small herd of chickens can be managed in as little as 1 hour per day. Goat milking can be done even faster, especially if you have a pump. You can then set up a low maintenance vegetable garden, which can take some work to set up, but once you're done with the initial setup, can require as little as 2 to 6 hours of maintenance work per week. To cap it all off, you can make your own cheap no-knead bread, which only takes 3 ingredients and can be made in just a few hours. And just like that, you have all your carbohydrates, proteins, and nutrient needs met with only 10 hours of work per week or even less. Yes, farm work is labor intensive, but only if you're forced to do it for capitalist profits. Hey guys, just wanted to say thank you all so much for this incredible, rapidly growing community we're building here. If you're new here and enjoying this content, definitely consider subscribing for more epic takedowns of these delusional corporate shills. If you do it for yourself, as you see, it's far, far less of a burden. Now, I know for a lot of you, buying even a cheap plot of land isn't feasible right now. Most of us are living paycheck to paycheck, so what do you do in this situation? I mentioned in a previous video that I believe society's obsession with career specialization is what totally screwed over Gen Z, economically speaking. In the past, people often knew how to do multiple skills to survive. They weren't exceptionally great at any one, but they were decently good enough at many. Now that we're expected to specialize in one specific skill, we have to go deep in student loan debt just to be able to learn it. Also, the idea of having a specialized skill was supposed to guarantee you job security, but ironically, it's done the exact opposite. When you're dependent on one single skill, the second labor market conditions change. Whether that's because your boss decides your services are no longer needed, or technology replaces your job, which is already happening now, you are just totally cooked as you have no other skills to rely on. On the other hand, if you have multiple skills and multiple streams of income, even if one of them fails or gets replaced by AI, you can still rely on the others. This is why most people who manage to get by these days have 3 or 4 different streams of income, if you've noticed. So now is actually a great time to respec our skill tree in the game of trying to survive this dogshit economy. Rather than trying to focus all our energy into reaching a 100 in one specific skill, what if we were to instead respec into being a 70 or 80 in 3 to 4 different skills? Maybe a 70 in farming, a 70 in some sort of online income, and a 70 with some real life gig work such as mowing lawns or walking dogs. This is true job security, as if one of these income streams fails, we can still depend on the others until we find a new one. Depending on one skill and one career just isn't viable in this economy anymore, where AI is rapidly reshaping the labor market, could replace your one skill and career at any moment, and employers treat you like disposable trash. So, if they're going to treat you like disposable trash, all you have to do is beat them at their own game. Have multiple skills, multiple gigs, and multiple streams of income so you can treat them like disposable trash too. Okay, so since we're only looking to get to about 70 in any given skill, it turns out you don't necessarily have to move entirely off grid and live purely off a farm to be able to grow your own food to some level and reduce your dependency on these miserable 9-to-5 jobs. It turns out micro homesteading is a thing, and you can grow a small, low maintenance vegetable garden even on a small balcony. If you can combine this with moving abroad where the rent is cheaper and a source of online remote income or even freelance gigs, you've now already escaped the misery of a traditional 9-to-5 career that is pretty much already dead now anyways, if we're being honest. You'll work 10, maybe 15 hours per week with the setup, and the work will be so much more dynamic and rewarding too. This is the beauty of being a jack of all trades as opposed to trying to specialize in one specific skill that can be taken away from you any moment. Living on a farm full-time isn't viable for most people, but you can learn from this and spec your skill tree high enough to where you have a reliable food source without totally being dependent on the system, but still enjoying modern society's conveniences to some level as well. So hopefully this helps you guys out in answering the burning question we've all had on our minds since forever. The world and society suck right now. Without a doubt, we're probably never going to get rich, own a house, or have all the luxuries our parents' generations had. But we can still escape the miserable 9-to-5 hellscape, live a dignified, meaningful life without an unbearable corporate nutjob boss breathing down our necks 24/7. And hopefully after watching this video, you have a better idea of how to do it. Work these days is just totally humiliating and degrading as well, which is why I see Gen Z's act of refusing to work being the most giga-chad self-respect ever. We talk about this more in this video right here. Check it out. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.